So welcome. Thank you for being here with me. I'm always honored to speak with other Earth Keepers about taking care of this beautiful Earth and all our relations. I want to welcome you men who are joining. I'm really pleased about that. I have done a lot of work with women over time and in some ways neglected you. And I love all of you so much, and I want to offer something to you. And as well, I want to welcome women because this information is important to you as well, and it's something you can offer to the males in your life. And also others, however you might identify around all of this, I really invite all of you, and I'm really honored to have you. So I'm going to begin with a song and a prayer. Hey, 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 ya, ya, hey, ya, ho, hi, ya, hey, ya, ya, hey, ya, ho, hi, ya, hey, ya, ya, hey, ya, ho, hi, ya, hey, ya, oh, hi, ya, hey, ya, hi, ya, hey, ya, hi, ya. Hey, 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 ya, ya, hey, ya, ho, hi. So Creator, Great Spirit, Mother, Father, we're so thankful to have this opportunity to be together in this way. I pray that I might be a hollow bone to bring through something to really serve the masculine energy on this planet in a way that uplifts everyone, as I know we all want in this time that is a critical and challenging time. So a special blessing for all the men that are gathered here and all who might eventually receive this information. May all be well. Ho, Mitakuyasan. So we're in an amazingly critical time on Earth. There's so much to be learned and grown into, so much that we need to transform as a human family. And I've addressed because the female energy, the feminine, and I shouldn't say female, but I mean feminine energy that lives in both men and women is very vital for us to bring forward right now. And so, naturally, I've been addressing women a lot. But they're really, really important things for you men, too. And anyone who's using that male energy. So I'm really excited to share these things with you, and I hope they're meaningful and useful to you. I believe they will be. And what it's about really is being a true man in our indigenous way. But let me start with a bit about where I think we are. You know, we've been living in and under the influence of the patriarchy for many, many generations. Many thousand, not generations, thousands of years. And often when we say that, you know, women realize how they have been suppressed and challenged through that patriarchy. But I think sometimes we don't recognize how much damage that's done to the beautiful, wonderful males in our society. When I say patriarchy, I'm talking about a very degraded masculine energy that's about domination, it's about using, it's about taking, it's about greed, it's about taking care of me and mine, rather than really looking at the larger whole and honoring everyone. And in that process, I think you men have really been damaged. You know, you've been told that you need to sit down and shut up and not cry and not have feelings, and you got to tough up and man up and all that kind of stuff. And yes, it's wonderful to really express your good, strong masculine energy and have your body healthy in that way. But to have to push and shove and you know, dominate, I don't think that's your energy. I don't think that's who you are. And it's certainly not who you need to be. To be powerful men, to be really powerful and balanced as men, that's just not appropriate. You know, we've all gotten hooked in consumerism, producing, doing. You got to do something, you got to handle something, you got to take care of something, you got to change something, you got to fix something kind of energy. And that is showing itself to be absolutely very much less than useful. And so we've gotten caught into this worker bee thing, you know. We got to work, we got to work, we got to get out there and do it. And yes, that active energy is very strongly the masculine. However, I feel like the way that things have gotten set up is that you men have been taken away from your families in a way. It's like work, work, work. Be gone all the time. Sometimes you're gone 60 hours a day. 60 hours a week. Some of you, long days, always having to devote yourself to your work, in a sense, over your family. If there's something going on that's important in your family, nope, you got to work. You can't take time off for that kind of stuff. It's divided men from their families. You don't get to see your children as much. You don't get to enjoy. You don't get to be present for the things that are important to them. So I think it's damaged men and it's damaged our families to be in that kind of a system. In some ways, I think of it as, you know, work and get stuff. You know, take care of things by getting the stuff, getting all of these material things, and forgetting that the real happiness comes out of connection and sharing and feeling joyful together. It's not about the stuff. And I think most of you recognize that, especially those of you who have gotten all the stuff and still not having what your heart wants and what your family wants. So it's really time to leave that kind of thing behind, I think. So that dominant energy has been about dominating, about having anything we want. If it harms anything else, no problem, it's just collateral damage. Really taking and using and harming. And in fact, what we're learning is that what really works is cooperation and sharing and connection and respect and honoring. I come out of a tradition and pay very close attention to the words of White Buffalo Calf Pipe Woman, who says, whatever we do to any other person or being in the circle of life, we do to ourselves, for we are one being. And I think that's beginning to show itself in the critical issues we have on Earth. You know, they're ecological issues, social issues, family issues, health issues. We're beginning to see the shattering of things that have been done in that very specific kind of way. It seems that dominant way is like, well, just kill them, get rid of them, whatever's not, you know, the bad bacteria, the bad people, whatever it is, just get rid of all of that and we're okay. And in fact, that is not workable. What we're literally doing ecologically on this planet is we're cutting down the tree, which is the tree we stand on, the plants and the animals and the life that came before us to make a way for us. We're standing at the top of the tree, maybe having the hubris and ignorance to think we're so important and we're special and life was created for us. You know, Creator and Mother, Father love every single small thing, ever as much as they love us. And we're very vulnerable. You know, when we're at the top of that tree, we are very vulnerable. And should we damage and cut down what is below us, then we fall as well. So I want to talk to you about what is possible. And I'll speak to you in an indigenous way about a true man. There are a lot of males around, but I'm talking about a true man as defined by my people. And that definition is this: a true man offers himself and his capabilities and his strength and his action and his ability to protect and provide, all of those things. He steps out there and uses them at whatever way. I had a brother who was a fabulous artist, and he influenced the world by that beautiful art that he put out. Other people do it in other ways, using the best of themselves and using your masculine, using it as best you can, and using it in service of the people. That's a true man. And that last piece is so important. In a sense, that's the feminine. It's like action and nurturing, holding, caring for. That balance is so powerful. And in our estimation, you are not a true man unless you are acting in service of your family, your circle, your community, the whole circle of life. So I'm going to share with you as much as I can about how I think you might find that in yourself and accent it, what's already there. Some of my grandmothers talk about moys, M-O-Y-S, which are men that are still immature. They've not become true men, the kind of men who are greedy and taking and wanting to dominate and abuse and just really not doing what a true man does, which is being in service of life, being in service of the people, protecting and providing and caring for, rather than dominating. So I'd like to see all men be able to step up and be true men. And in the old days, you had the help of your grandmothers who had been spiritual practice 24/7, vision quests 4 times a month in their moon lodge, deepening their spirit and connecting to source. And those grandmothers in our culture, their commitment is not just to what themselves or what's around them, the people around them, but the commitment is to the whole circle, all our relations, that the children of all things should be cared for. And when you were around those grandmothers, they paid attention and they called on you. They reminded you when you weren't doing that. And they called on you to be the best man you could be. And interestingly enough, in many of those cultures, the Grandmother's Council, the Wisdom Women's Council, the Elder Women's Council, could not only invite and choose a chief, they could also depose a chief. If they chose someone, and instead of taking care of the people and paying attention to, what they needed and how to support that, if he decided to go to war and be a tough guy and, show them all that we're superior, whoop, out he went. The grandmothers were not willing to have a leader that did not take care of the people. So that feminine energy, again, was there to support you being your best self. And I hope, even though I'm not a grandmother officially, I'm an elder, I can be your auntie. And I'd love to share these things with you, to invite you to bring that more and more out in your life. I want to talk about the function of the masculine. Because again and again I will remind you that the masculine and feminine live in all of us and find a beautiful balance if we're really going to be the finest people we can be. So in the male, the functions are to procreate, provide, and protect. And that's pretty classic, isn't it? The man, especially in earlier times, his job was to go out and do the major provision. It wasn't that the women didn't grow gardens and bring in small animals and do so much, but really that energy, in a sense, when they used that energy, that was their masculine. So the masculine is about that kind of thing, and it's certainly about protection. Always the circle of men protecting the village, protecting the people, protecting the elders, protecting the women and children. So to procreate, provide, and protect. the function of the feminine is birthing, nurturing, and renewing life. And many men who are good fathers, although they perhaps help with the birth, they don't do the birthing, but they absolutely are nurturing, loving, supporting beings, caring, and helping to move things forward in a way that life renews itself by honoring the feminine, honoring the women, honoring the birthing mothers, honoring the children, taking care of life in that way. You're probably getting the hint that I'm going to talk a lot about the feminine here, because that's the finding of balance in yourself. And you know, those grandmothers were wise because they had done those vision quests in their moon lodge. 4 times a month, 48 times a year, over 40 years of life. I think it's almost 2,000 vision quests. So they were incredibly wise. One example of this that I like to offer is that the Iroquois Confederacy and some of the eastern tribes were active and interacting a lot with the founding fathers of our American government. That form of governance that they had was adopted largely by the founding fathers, although they left out some significant pieces that were about the feminine. Because some of you who know that kind of system of governments, there's a House of Representatives and a Senate. That's the, you know, the governing body figuring out what needs to be done. There's the executive branch that would be the active, putting it into action, and then a judicial branch. But the Senate, one of the houses of governance, it consisted of the wise elder women, which makes such good sense because their dedication was to taking care of the people. And so I'm talking about that aspect of energy that's really about taking care of the people. So let's talk about how this lives in your male body. I was told something by a wonderful mentor of mine named Allison Armstrong, who's really focused on men and how men function and the way we can interact with men to bring beauty for all of us. And she said something that I thought was very, very interesting. She said, you know, little boys, in a sense, have the tender, sweet heart that we might think of as a little girl's heart. They're so sweet. They're wanting to do something. Remember, little boys, I want to be a fireman and save people. I want to, you know, they're wanting to help. And so she said the first stage in a man's life, using a classic English metaphor, is the first are pages. And the page is the one who runs and does, that helps, that takes care of things, that does all of that kind of thing. So he's a helper. He's offering his energy to help. And he helps the knights. The knights are the ones who go out into the world and get into action. Really start doing things, seeing things, beginning to use their masculine energy to feel the strength of that, and also to connect with the larger world. And then she said is the stage of the prince. And that's where, in a sense, you settle down more. You might have in your early years gone, you know what, I'm putting on a backpack and I'm going to go to India, I'm going to go to Bhutan, I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to go to America, whatever you did, to really get out there and start to establish yourself. But the prince then is the one who, you know, in a sense, comes home and starts to create a space, create a home, make a space, and often make a space for a family. Sometimes men marry those who they meet in their night stage. You know, they're out there, they're traveling, it's romantic, they're moving around and all of that. And then they come together to build in that princely stage. But other men don't feel comfortable with that. They want to establish, you know, they want to have something good going on. They want to know that they can support a family. They want to have Maybe they want to have a home and a good space created, and then they invite someone into their life. Either way is fine, but it's interesting to think about how you might have done or might do that process. And then there's the king. The king is the one who, a mature man who has learned to take care of a larger family of life, really paying attention and build up to the top of his career, to the top of his active life, doing things, making things happen, perhaps gathering resources, and then turning it over to the younger ones. Then a stage I love that she talks about is the stage of the sage. The sage is when the king can let go of things and let go of that outer world and those kind of responsibilities and becomes a wise man, becomes an elder, becomes a counselor, becomes a teacher, and offers the beauty of what he has learned and what he has gained over his lifetime, and supports younger men, supports all of life in a different and perhaps more gentle and spiritual way than he might have. So I think that's an interesting way to look at your lives. I think it can fit for everyone and just give you a sense of what stage you're in and where you're headed and how you might move up through those stages into being a sage as you grow older. And something that's important as we move into another area here is to realize that men and women's bodies, their psyches, their way of being are different. One of the things that's happened under the kind of dominant energy we've had is that everybody gets treated the same. Everybody needs to go to work all the time. Even if women's bodies need something else, they need time with their children, they need time as their cycles turn. Hey, doesn't matter. So it's interesting to know yourself as a man and how that is, and also acknowledge the differences and honor those differences. And one of the things that I want to talk about is your hormones. Let's say that you're a man who's really gone for it, and in a sense there's a competition is one of the energies of men. It's like in the old days it was who can bring the most food, who can take care of their family the best, and those men were really the one that women wanted to be around. It wasn't so much a romance. It's like, you know, our place and our family need to be provided and cared for. Who is it that I can join with as a man that will do that? So there's always that sense of competition, and it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to put anyone else down. It's just about the stimulation to do your best. I see this often. I was raised with horses in the backcountry and big herds of horses. And one of the things I've seen is that they love to race with each other. They love that energy. And they're out there just going for it as hard as they can go for it. Somebody wins and somebody doesn't, but they all have a wonderful time. So it's that sense of competition, of wanting to be the best. And I think that kind of, in a sense, competition with yourself is really important. But let's say this person does very well in the business world. Maybe he's the CEO of his company, and he negotiates something that is fabulous for everybody, from the top executives right down to the people who take care of the place. And they're all thrilled, and they're all congratulating him and saying, yes, wonderful. That man has received support for the hormones in his body that make him feel good, that help him be vital and alive. That is testosterone. And we somehow these days have a bad thought about testosterone. You're looking at kind of energy. It's like, that's not it. That's an extreme of it. But testosterone is what really supports your body. So competing and hopefully doing well gives you energy, gives you that testosterone. Another thing that gives you energy is to be praised for the good things you do. So you get good energy that way. So then let's say our man goes home and he likes to just quiet down In the old days, it was like put the paper around his face and read it and, you know, leave me alone kind of thing. These days, you might have a den or a man cave that you can go to and just be in quiet. And the function of that is that when you are around other people, not just around men that you might, quote, compete with, but when, let's say you're around women or others who have challenges, who have some kind of a problem, your natural tendency is to do something, is to try to fix it, is to try to figure out how to handle it. And that's not restful. So the restfulness that allows you to rebuild your testosterone and allows you to really come back to yourself and have the energy to step out again is taking time by yourself. Hopefully once you do that, you'll be able to come out and offer your good energy again in support of the life around you, in helping with all of those things that women take care of often in the evening. You know, the family, the food, the garbage, all the things that need to be done. Hopefully you can come out of that quiet time into activity that's supportive to the life around you. And here's something important for you to know, especially if you're bosses and other people and you're interacting with the women in your life. A woman could go through that same cycle. She could be the head of her corporation. She could do something wonderful. She could get praised for it. And she would come home. Very likely she doesn't get to just cool out. She's got to pick up the groceries, pick up the kids, pick up the laundry, handle dinner, take care of the house and all of that. And her support comes from working with other women, which is very interesting and not what I'll address here. But it's a very different kind of energy. She doesn't receive good energy. She doesn't receive the oxytocin that supports her from that kind of behavior. And so she needs to find it in other ways. And I think it's really important for men to recognize that she doesn't get the same internal support from that kind of thing. She gets that from love, from connection. A little good sex is great. All of that supportive, nurturing, connecting energy, and especially connecting and working with others, is what supports her life. So I think it's good for you to know how your internal body works and what really supports you, and use those things, be aware of them so that you can create a healthy and vital body. The next thing is, I want to take you around the medicine wheel, because that has a lot of lessons for all of us. I like to start in the east. The east is morning, dawning, springtime, sun rising, things beginning to be active and moving. It's like little sprouts coming up. Birthing, children coming forth into the light. Ideas, it's like, aha, the light bulb came on. Now I have a great idea. So that time is the little masculine. Then we move to summer. Summer is active, busy, getting things done, handling things, creating, accomplishing. It's warm, busy, growing. All of the plants are growing. It's activity, it's movement, and a lot of it. Things are really popping and happening. A lot's being achieved, a lot's being created and made. And in a business, it might be you get a bright idea, and this is getting it going. Let's do it. Let's try this. Let's try this new way of doing things. So it's putting things into action. And that is the big masculine. Then we go on around the circle, and we come to evening. And evening, autumn, quieting. We let go of the activity and quiet. We go into that quieter time that's letting go of work and letting go of a lot of activity and push and shove. It's really about quieting down and starting to rest. Settling back. It's also about letting go, the leaves letting go and falling. And also, in a sense, it's about gathering. It's about gathering the produce, the harvest. And if we were talking about a project, bright idea, put it into action. In the West is what I would say is information. It's like the computer printout. We sold this much, we did this much, we handled this much, we made this much difference. Whatever that is, it's all the sort of facts and figures of that come out in the West. We're really starting to drop back, and instead of being active, we're gathering. We're beginning to go inward a bit more. We're letting go instead of push and shove and action and make things happen. Whew. We get to start relaxing. And that is the little feminine. And I'm talking about principles here. You can understand I'm not saying men and women. It's a principle, and it's active in your life just like everyone else. So that little feminine in the West, and then around to the north. The north, midnight, midwinter, dark, still. And of course, if you're listening from Australia and down under, of course, these, you can translate these to the fact that this would be the south for you. But for me, in my experience, it's the north. And the north then, the way I see the north is white buffalo woman, this woman of incredible wisdom, sitting in quiet, meditating, a frozen lake of wisdom, constant, deep, and rich before her, white buffalo standing beside her, and snowy owl hovering over her head. The north is the time when we take the information that we've gained, we take the experience we've gained, all of that, we bring it around into quietness, the quietness of sleep, of dream, the quietness of meditation, the quietness of contemplation. And what we find here in the north is meaning. What did this mean? You know, these are all these numbers, but did it really help? Another question in the north is, did it not only help just that little segment that we were paying attention to, but how did it actually work for the whole environment, for the whole company, for the whole community, for the world? So it's really about expanding into the wholeness. In a certain way, I sometimes refer to those things as shaman time. You know, it's not out there busy making things happen, pushing and shoving. It's like dropping into the ancient brain, the deep brain, where intelligence lives. Not intellect in the south, but intelligence. And that intelligence connects to the deep, deep truths, the deep principles of life, the deep meaning of life. The whole circle, the holy circle, what quantum physics talks about now. There is a oneness and we are all connected. It's important that we are all connected and that we pay attention to that. So that's what takes place in the north, and that is the big feminine. That's the feminine energy. So you wouldn't want to go without sleep. So remember that the feminine lives in the great cycle. It's masculine and feminine, and that those things are equally important. But one of the things I see in the larger world is that often we get a bright idea, we do it, we get going, maybe we get the information and then we go again. It's like we don't really take time for that quieting, that contemplation, sensing the meaning of things. Did it really work? I mean, on the surface it looked like it, but really let's look deeper. Let's see what really happened here. And in our native way, we think of the good red road going from the north, which is wisdom, meaning, wholeness, health, holiness, going from the north to the south, from that total not doing. into the action of the South. We have two helpers in that. One, awareness, wakefulness, seeing things, vision, and letting go, clearing stuff out that's not useful. And we walk that red road into action. But in the dominant culture we've had, in the patriarchal culture, it seems like those going into not doing anything, it's like, really? Is that okay? It's like, is that a waste of time to meditate and all of that? No, it isn't. You know that if you've done your work. So remembering that feminine aspect is like the grounding baseline. Even the seeds are quiet. Then, February, in bulk, boop, the little seeds start going, okay, here we go. And boom, in the east, the little masculine again, coming up, showing themselves above the earth, those strong and soft, beautiful little stems and sprouts. So, again, another way of looking at the male and the masculine and the feminine in the circle of life. What I want to talk about now is men using the feminine. Because I feel like the patriarchy has said, oh, if you use the feminine, you're sissy, you're not a man, you're not good, you're not doing what you should. And that is so much BS. Listen to your auntie here. Because I want to talk to you about how men use the function of the feminine. On my home ground, there's a ranch now called Sacred Ground, and it's a place of honoring and raising buffalo. And my friend Tana there makes sure that when sacred hunts are done, that they're done in a sacred way. And interestingly enough, she didn't allow those buffalo to be touched. She didn't eat any of it. She didn't do anything. They were her special beings and people. But they said to her, interestingly enough, as she was in meditation, you need to balance. You're giving, taking away from your life in many ways to give to us, and we need to give back. And so she began sacred hunts. And those sacred hunts are done in this way. The hunters come in, they have a talk with Tana, those guns and everything are blessed, and they pray. And they ask in the old traditional way. Hunters did this. They asked. They cleansed themselves in Sweat Lodge. They dropped away anything negative, and they said, blessed ones around us, my family needs to eat. Will someone offer themselves? And I know you're giving away your life, and I pledge my life to taking care of you in the circle of life. And then they went out and sat and waited until some animal, perhaps a deer, presented itself. And I've talked to hunters who've seen this happen, that something presents itself if they just do that ceremony and wait. So at Sacred Ground then, they finish that, they take plenty time with that, and then the experienced hunters take them out on the hillsides near the buffalo herd, and they quiet themselves, asking again if someone is wanting to offer themselves. And a buffalo will come out, separate itself from the herd, and offer itself. And she said, they seem to be looking around and going, look at this beautiful life. I'm so honored to have lived this life, and I'm so ready to give away. I will come again. And the hunters are not allowed to take a shot until the buffalo presents the most vulnerable part of itself so that the kill will be clean and quick. And what they do is they turn and offer this part of their head. A shot is taken, the buffalo goes down, and the men go, make offering, say thank you. It's very moving and very powerful. And then they take the meat and use it, and they use it well. If they're not going to take the skull and the hide, it's given to native people. Even if they are hunting for someone else, the meat is given to someone, so it's used. but it's a sacred way of hunting. Another thing is on the Pribilof Islands, I've been told by an elder that the way that they hunted is he would be taken as a young boy. They live on the they live from the walrus, and they have kayaks, and they would go out, 5 or 6 of the hunters with their harpoons would go out into the ocean and sit, calling, inviting, meditating, giving thanks, giving thanks. Thank you. Thank you for offering yourself. Thank you for offering yourself. And he said, someone would go, ah! And everyone would turn, look exactly at the same area in the water. A walrus could come up, and they would go into their masculine action, out of the feminine that they had been in, out of their masculine into action. Again, using the feminine in their lives. And I want to talk a little bit, too, about invention and discovery. I'm trying to give you ideas here and examples to not be frightened of the feminine. The feminine is beautiful and powerful and deep and rich and shamanic and fabulous. So there are a couple interesting things. I'm going to actually pick up a piece of paper and read something to you that Einstein said. Einstein was an amazing inventor, a very powerful man in our world, said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand." That's the feminine, the imagination, going deep, going in deep and finding things. And there's another example. There was a guy named Friedrich Kekulé, I think his name was. Early on, they had found a new element called benzene, and they were trying to figure out how to represent it in the chemical way. And it really didn't work in the way that they thought, in the way that you normally could do it, because it kept canceling itself out. So this fellow, having studied, he did his homework, he knew what was going on. He just kind of started one afternoon to relax and drift and kind of dream a little. And he had one time early in his life been impressed by the alchemical symbol of a snake connecting to its own tail. And in this dream, he saw 2 snakes. They came and they connected to each other's tail. And, oh my God, that's it! And he understood from that how the benzene ring works and how it could be represented. So these kind of things are very powerful. They're the feminine. When White Buffalo Woman came, the beautiful indigenous goddess that came long ago, when she came, come to the people in this magical, amazing way, she was greeted by 2 men. One man came in lust. He said, "Whoa, this is a good-looking gal, and she's alone out here on the prairie. I mean, come on." And he went toward her with lust in his heart. She opened her robes. The mist circled them. And the other man said that when that robe opened, his skull and bones fell out and were blown across the prairie. But there was a true man there, a true warrior who used his masculine. He was up there to hunt buffalo and protect his people. He used that true masculine self, even having watched what happened. I'm sure he was shaking in his boots, his moccasins. He had the courage to step forward and say, "Oh, powerful and beautiful one, will you come and teach my people?" Instead of turning and running, it's like, "Let me out of here." He stayed, he stood, because he knew something powerful was happening, something that he could experience himself and honor his people with. So he was there as a true man. I know that lives in every one of you. So I hope these things have been helpful. I hope you can let them deepen into you so that you can really use the whole circle of life, that you're not frightened of any of it, that you don't think any of it's bad or negative or less than. Use all of it. Use the richness of that feminine principle, that deepening, going right to source, quieting, holding, nurturing, respecting, honoring, caring. Use that aspect in your life. Because my sincere wish for you is for you to be a true man. A man who uses the beauty of who he is in his masculine body in service, not only of himself, but his family, his community, and the whole circle of life. I wish you very well.